So in the disorders chapter, there's 3 distinct disorders that we talk about. Hypersensitivities, and how many hypersensitivities are there? Yep, 4. And the good news is I don't want you guys memorizing the numbers, right? There's hypersensitivity type 1, 2, 3, and 4, obviously. But that doesn't tell you a whole lot, right? And so we're going to go by the full titles for those. And on the test, right, I'll write type 1 and what the title is for type 1, and so on and so forth. Autoimmune disease. So auto means what? Self. So in this case, the immune system is attacking self. So what's going wrong here? Yes, probably in the thymus, right? Some of those thymocytes escaped, right? That unfortunately recognize self. There's some other theories out there in that some antigens have developed very similar to our own, what we call self-antigens, our own proteins and molecules, and so unfortunately we're getting some cross-reactivity there. There's also a belief that there are certain sites within the body that are usually privileged sites, which means that the immune system doesn't usually go there. And so when these sites, because of injury, become available to the immune system, that's when we were never programmed not to attack that, because we never thought we were going to see it. So unfortunately, we then attack it. So those are some of the theories as to why and how autoimmune happens. Immunodeficiency. So what does deficient mean? Inadequate, right? Lacking, right? So when the immune system is no longer functioning to the best of its ability. Now there's one infectious virus that's named after the fact that it can do that to our immune system, right? What's it called? HIV is the virus. Human immunodeficiency virus, right? It can cause the immune system to be deficient. Because what T cell does it attack? The CD4, the helper T cells. And it is in fact the CD4 marker that those cells use to communicate with our cells. That's what the virus attaches to gain entry into those cells. There are other ways that the immune system can be deficient. You can be born genetically deficient, right? You could have, and there's different defects and such that we'll discuss. Not going to make you guys memorize them, right? The really important meat of the matter are going to be these hypersensitivities. So for type 1, it's referred to as IgE mediated. So as the name indicates, right, which antibody class are we dealing with? Erica's favorite, not IgE, right? It's mediated, and a lot of times too it says immediate, right? This response can be immediate. So there are 4 distinct examples that we talk about as it relates to these types of hypersensitivities that we'll go over. So here, this one, it says immediate, right? So it's characterized by immediate reaction of sensitized individuals, right? Which means that we were already exposed once before. We already made IgEs. We already made memory B cells that are going to make more IgE when we're exposed to this. The tendency to have type 1 hypersensitivities is inherited. The tendency of your immune system to go this route, to go the IgE route for these certain types of invaders. And then there's different types depending on whether the reaction is local, and it's referred to as anaphylaxis sometimes, or generalized. So when they say someone is in anaphylactic shock, it means that, you know, it's because of an allergen, it's an IgE-mediated response, and they're in shock. What does shock mean? Extreme drop in blood pressure, right? Why would your blood pressure go down if you're producing IgEs? It has to do with what cells IgE binds to. What cells does it bind to? Basophils. One more. Mast cells. And when these guys, when the antigens bind to those antibodies already on the surface of these guys, right? When you produce IgEs, they go bind to mast cells and basophils in that area. So when the allergen is inhaled, this is why it literally can take seconds, right? For someone like myself who has already been sensitized, already has IgEs coating my mast cells and basophils. The minute that allergen touches those antibodies coating those cells degranulate. They release something called histamine, which is a vasodilator. And the mast cells release substances that cause the blood vessels to become leaky. So you get inflammation, right? When you get inflammation, what's happening? Swelling. What creates that swelling? What's that swelling? What's causing swelling? Blood, but what part of your blood? The liquid phase leaks in, right? The white blood cells are going to go into that area, right? Neutrophils and macrophages if they're being called there. But the problem is that those blood vessels will become permeable and the liquid leaks out. That's the swelling. The problem is you only have so much liquid in your body, right? If you have too much liquid leaving your blood vessels, your blood pressure is going to drop dramatically, which means your system can't pump the blood where it needs to go. Your vital organs don't get what they need. So if somebody who potentially could go into anaphylactic shock, what do they usually carry around with them? An EpiPen. What is that? Epinephrine. What does epinephrine do? It causes vasoconstriction and increased heart rate. I don't do so well with epinephrine. Just to let you know, they stick it in lidocaine and the stuff they use to numb your teeth. And when I had to have my breast biopsy too, they stuck me with it. And I was, whoa. I was like, what is happening? Right? I'm like, I do not feel good. Right? And I was sitting there and I said to the nurse, I was like, you guys numbed me, right? I was like, was there epinephrine in that? She's like, oh yeah, lidocaine always has epinephrine in it. I'm like, okay, good, this will pass. In the meantime, I felt like I was going to die. One time when I was at the dentist, I was nervous as it was because I was getting a crown. My heart was like pounding out of my chest. Like, I'm very sensitive to epinephrine. So I'm glad I don't have that type of allergy. But when people take that, they still got to go to the hospital, right? That's just a temporary, like, okay, we need to fix this blood pressure problem. That's what the epinephrine does, right? It's a patch, right? To get you someplace where they can probably, hopefully, effectively deal with the problem. I have to say I don't have that extreme of an allergy, so I'm not exactly sure what they do for you once you get to the hospital. But you still got to go to the hospital. So why would you, now for me, I'm lucky, right? So if I inhale something in my nose, it's all happening up here, right? That's local. So who has to worry who's carrying around an EpiPen? When this can go generalized. So when and how is an allergen going to get all throughout your body very quickly? What are you going to do probably? You're going to eat it, right? Food allergies, peanut allergies, right? It seems like it's all we talk about if you have school-age kids, right? At my nephew's school back home, they literally have in the cafeteria a dairy-free table, a peanut-free table, right? My nephew does not like to sit with a lot of people. He really wanted to sit at the dairy-free table where there's one kid, right? And he got upset and threw his lunchbox, and his grandmother had to come pick him up from school because he wanted to sit at that table, but he had dairy in his lunch. So ever since then, my sister has made him a dairy-free lunch so he can sit there. And the other parents are extremely grateful because that poor child was all by himself. Now he has a buddy, right? And my nephew's happy because he only has to sit with one kid instead of a whole bunch of crazy kids at lunch, right? But why is it that we have all these allergies now, right? Peanut allergies are like out the wazoo. What's the problem here? Why do you have a peanut allergy? Probably because who had it? Your parents, right? The problem is, right, they found out about it early enough and quit eating it, right? Or if they had a serious reaction, we had things like EpiPens and access to health care. So what happened? They lived, right? And they procreated and passed on that bad information, right? That's why we have so much peanut allergy, right? My son has his nasal allergies, has me to thank. I have my mom to thank, right? And probably someone else, right, where it developed, right? So that's why we're seeing more and more allergy, because people aren't dying from it anymore, right? We have therapies, we have knowledge, right? But we pass on this defect. Hence why it's more prevalent. It's not that we know more about it. Yeah, it is that we know more about it, but we also, can prevent people from dying. But that's also why, right, parents get really insane about it. Because think about this, when you're exposed, you go through this same reaction we've been talking about. So you produce even more IgE. So that the chance the next time you're exposed, the reaction is huge. And especially if it's a generalized reaction, something you ingested, right? This is going into your bloodstream. This is traveling system-wide. Can you imagine having system-wide inflammation? That's anaphylactic shock for you. That's scary stuff. Bee stings. What's the problem with that? It could get into the bloodstream, right? It won't stay localized. All right, so I'll let you guys go. I am going to extend that Learn Smart, so those of you guys that haven't done it. And then also look for my discussion board. I'm going to be posting a little bit later today to sign up for the Science Expo, which is not this Friday, but next Friday. I need lots of help, right? You get bonus points for doing it. It's fun, right? You can handle it. The what? Oh, the chickenpox game. Chickenpox game.